my opinion, probably one of the most important things for people to develop if we're trying to create any kind of behavior change is a mindfulness practice. Now, most people, when they start talking about mindfulness, their eyes roll back in the back of their heads and they're like, oh my God, here we go. Got to empty my mind of thoughts and all that sort of stuff. Actually, from a DBT perspective, mindfulness is looked at recognizing how full your mind is of thoughts.
So I just thought maybe you could just explain the differences between CBT and DBT.
Okay, so DBT actually, so this is quite a common thing that people say, is that cognitive behavior therapy is actually an umbrella term for a whole bunch of different therapies. Inside of cognitive behavior therapy, you have dialectical behavior therapy, you have acceptance and commitment therapy, you have rational emotive behavior therapy, and you have the original, well, not the original, but the one that everybody calls CBT, which is cognitive therapy. So DBT is basically a skills building program where there is a little bit of cognitive therapy in it, in that we're trying to understand what our stories are, what's going on in our system, but it's predominantly revolves around behavior patterns that we're trying to put into place to help us live the life that we want to live. So it starts with in my opinion, probably one of the most important things for people to develop if we're trying to create any kind of behavior change is a mindfulness practice. Now, most people, when they start talking about mindfulness, their eyes roll back in the back of their heads and they're like, oh my God, here we go. Got to empty my mind of thoughts and all that sort of stuff. Actually, from a DBT perspective, mindfulness is looked at recognizing how full your mind is of thoughts and being able to observe and describe these thoughts as particular parts of your personality or behavior patterns that are trying to come out that fall into three different states of mind. So the first state of mind is emotion mind. So when I'm in an emotion mind space, there's a part of me that is really emotional in its response. So it's that angry child. It might be the angry protector that's activated in my system. And I'm blending with that particular part of me in order to behave that way. Then there is reason mind on the other side, which is where there's all these parts that have no empathy. They're quite cold. They're very rational and logical in the way that we see the world. And when I'm blended with parts from that person, that side of my personality, I'm really not understanding what other people's needs are. It's very, very cold in the reaction. It lacks empathy in any way. So what tends to happen is people get dominant and flip back and forth, black and white, into two different states of mind. What we're trying to create is this middle of the road, which is called wise mind. So in wise mind, we're able to see what's happening to the parts of us in emotion mind and see what's happening to the parts of us in reason mind, understand where they're coming from, but make a decision based on all of the evidence that's there, including the facts. So fundamentally, there has to be some kind of a mindfulness practice to build self-awareness. The vast majority of people think they're self-aware, but the vast majority of people are not self-aware when you start having those kind of conversations.
I'm really self-aware that I have no self-awareness is what I'm saying. It's like I'm world class at that as well, because I don't know that, but I do know that. I was going to ask you for an anecdote of something like this, so that way a parent who might come across this for the very first time can identify that as a red flag in their child or themselves or a family member, and then be able to understand that a little better. So could you give us an example of like a behavioral pattern, how DBT would actually function into that, so that way people could better understand that?
Yeah. So in order to understand how DBT would work with that, you need to know what the other three criteria, or the other three modules are that we work with inside of DBT. So the first is mindfulness, and that underpins everything. That is the primary thing that we need to get down. We need to really understand the mindfulness aspect of it, because without mindfulness, then none of the other skills work. Okay. The second set of skills are what called distress tolerance skills. So in a distress tolerance skill module, you learn specific ways of behaving to try to reduce the amount of damage that's done by your behavior patterns that are reacting to a sense of distress in your system. So the biggest one that I always start with is called the stop skill. So the stop skill, basically in DBT, they use something called mnemonics. So mnemonics is where you take the letter of the word and it means something that you're supposed to do. So STOP, the stop skill. S stands for stop. So as soon as you notice that you're becoming dysregulated, there's an anger that's in your system, there's something that's going on, I'm going to stop. I'm not doing anything. I'm not saying anything. I'm not reacting to anything. I'm not sending a text message, an email. I'm not making a phone call. I'm doing absolutely nothing. And then T, I'm either going to take a deep breath or I'm going to take a step back. That allows me to kind of slow everything down. I'm going to practice my mindful breathing. As I said, mindfulness is really important. So I'm going to breathe, and I'm going to, if I need to, remove myself from the situation so that I can which is observe the situation. So when we're observing the situation, I'm either observing externally or I'm observing internally to see what's happening. And this is probably the gateway skill when I talk about DBT skills. This is the gateway skill to implementing some of those other skills. So then the P stands for proceed from a mindful perspective. So stop, take a deep breath, observe what's happening, and proceed from a mindful perspective.
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in there for a second. So when you say observe, obviously from the mindfulness standpoint, is it what am I seeing? What am I interpreting? What do I think I'm seeing? Is it being more objective about what's causing the threat to control or the impulse or that? Because I know specifically when I started this work, I didn't have the ability to sit in that in the very beginning. That was a big muscle that I needed to learn. And then objective, because I just wanted to just like make the pain go away.
Yeah.
And then I would just make up shit. You know, that wasn't even there. And it was just like, you know, that really happened? No, but man, did it sound really cool, because it got what I wanted to get out of that, which is I wanted to vilify that person, or I wanted to make that person or demean them or whatever it was. So I felt better about it. But I didn't have the ability to observe inside of that or to notice what it was, because someone would say, did that really happen? I'm like, yeah, 100% it happened. Knee jerk. Like, did it really happen? Just exactly 8 billion people in the world. Would they all see it the exact same way? And I would be like, yeah, of course they would. Yeah. And of course they wouldn't.
Right. So the observe piece really goes back to what we were talking about before around understanding your personality and recognizing those different parts of you, like the different modes of behavior that are kicking in, and getting familiar with the language of those particular parts. So what you want to do when you're observing is really pay attention. Yeah, a lot of people focus on observing what's happening externally. So, you know, this guy's here, that guy's there, this is happening there, this is going on, and just really paying attention to the facts of what's happening out there. But the observe internally is probably the most important piece, because what I'm trying to identify is there a part of me that I'm blending with right now? And if there is, I need to describe it in a non-judgmental way. So if I notice that there's a part of me that's getting really angry, the behavior that comes out, the response that comes out to deal with that is to label it in a non-judgmental way. So and this is called cognitive diffusion. It's a way to diffuse from that particular part of your personality, or unblend from its behavior pattern. So you literally just label it in a non-judgmental way. So one of the ways that I do that is I notice, wow, there's a part of me that's really angry about that situation. I hear you, buddy. It's okay that you're there. I recognize that you're there. What that does is it disengages me from that particular emotional reaction. And the more that I practice that, the more that it will become a behavior when I fall into that observe phase of my recovery lifestyle. So it becomes habitual for me to respond in that way. But it really comes down to, in the early part of doing this behavior work, learning how to identify what part of your personality is active by the thought process and the feeling that's going on for you, and then cognitively diffusing from it by labeling it in a non-judgmental way. So I wouldn't label it in a way of going, you know, oh, there's that part of me that's angry, and then call it a whole bunch of names, right? Because that's just judging it. I'm just going to label it as, there's a part of me that's really angry. I hear you. I see you. And what that does is it creates a sense of self-validation.
And where do you go past stop?
So stop is, again, it's a distress tolerance skill, right? So it's kind of like the starting point in DBT, where we want to learn how to tolerate the different distress, the level of distress that we're experiencing. Once you're learning how to do these things, the O in the stop skill is the place where you pull on all the other different skills that you can learn. So, you know, if you still find yourself in a level of distress that you just can't tolerate, there's another skill called TIP, which is temperature control, intense exercise, progressive muscle relaxation, or paced breathing. So TIPP. If you notice when you're observing that your emotion is just flying out of control, can I reduce my temperature? So splash cold water on your face, put your hand in freezing cold water or ice. Is it appropriate for me to practice some kind of intense exercise? Because it's been proven that when you involve yourself in a short burst of intense exercise, it shuts down that desire to run away, and it disengages from that particular fight or flight system. can you practice some paced breathing or progressive muscle relaxation, which is where you tense up your muscles and then let them go, and tense up your muscles and let them go while breathing. So that's another distress tolerance skill. Or you go into what's called emotion regulation, which is the third of the four modules inside of DBT. So in emotion regulation, we do things like check the facts. So we're gonna look at the situation that's going on right now. If I'm able to, if I've reduced that level of distress, now I'm going to check the facts as to what's actually going on, as opposed to what my story is telling me what's going on. And this is a really important skill to learn, because it starts to differentiate between what's going on in actuality and what's going on in the reality that I'm creating. Hey guys, first of all, I want to thank you for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed the content. This particular chat was filmed as a part of the podcast series to support my good friend, Chuck Basti, and all the work he does as a mental health advocate at Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo. If you want to see the full podcast or just see more of what Chuck does on his social media platform, check out his YouTube channel that's linked in the description below. When it comes to what's going on here, I am on a serious mission to make this platform profitable. Why? Because when I do, I am committed to making sure that every single penny of profit that's made from this YouTube channel goes back into serving the community that needs it most. So, as always, please like this video, leave a comment below, and make sure you subscribe to the channel to get all the latest content available right here at The Liberation Place. Come join us for our live online conversations every week. I'll put all the links in the description below, and let's get the word out there about living the life you want to live, not staying stuck in the life you're currently stuck in. Hopefully, see you soon.